The grand hall stretched so far that Minji could barely see the walls on the other side. Thousands of alien beings filled the space, their voices creating a sound like distant thunder. She stood on a small platform in the center, wearing her navy blue uniform with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her face showed no emotion, though her heart raced inside her chest. Beside her stood Do-hyun, his left arm made of metal and circuits that gleamed under the bright lights. His hand stayed near his weapon, even though weapons were not allowed here. Old habits from the war were hard to break. On her other side, young Yuna whispered numbers and facts, trying to help Minji understand the alien cultures that surrounded them. This was the Galactic Assembly, a place where hundreds of alien species came to talk and make decisions. Earth had asked to join this group, to be recognized as equals among the stars. But not everyone wanted humans here. High Arbiter Velthox rose from his seat. He was massive, like a giant insect covered in hard shell that reflected the light. His many eyes looked at Minji with something that needed no translation. Contempt. He thought humans were nothing. His voice came through the translation system, cold and sharp. The Kalith had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. They had destroyed species who challenged them. They had crushed rebellions before they started. And now they looked at Earth's 4 small colonies like a rich man looks at coins on the ground. Velthox made his demand simple. Earth must give up its colonies. New Seoul, Busan Station, Jeju Orbital, and Incheon Prime would all become Kalith property. In return, Earth itself could stay independent. But there were rules. No more warships. No more colonies. No research into better weapons or engines. Humans would stay on their one planet, controlled and watched. The hall filled with noise. Some aliens agreed with the Kalith. They thought humans were dangerous because they had reached space travel too fast. They had not earned it the slow way, through millions of years of evolution. Other aliens stayed quiet, remembering when stronger species had done the same thing to them. Minji felt all eyes turn to her. This was the moment that would decide everything. She could accept and save Earth. She could refuse and doom her species to war against an enemy they could not defeat. The smart choice was obvious. Survival meant surrender. But Minji had not come here to be smart. She had come here to draw a line. She pressed the button that amplified her voice across the massive hall. Every translation system in the building carried her words to every species present. She spoke of Earth's history, the centuries of war before humans finally learned to work together, the time when Earth's climate almost killed everyone, when the planet itself seemed to reject its children, the years of rebuilding, when humans learned that cooperation was not weakness but strength. She spoke of the colonies not as conquest but as insurance, scattered seeds of humanity across the stars because they had learned how easily a species could die. Then her voice grew harder, like steel wrapped in silk. We have drawn a line. Our colonies are not for sale. Our people are not bargaining tools. We came here seeking peace, and we still want peace. But we will not buy peace with chains around our necks. If any species crosses that line, if any fleet comes to our worlds with weapons ready, they will learn something about humanity. We learned many lessons from our bloody past. The final lesson was this: when our survival is threatened, we do not surrender. We adapt. We fight. We win, or we die trying. But we never, ever give up. The Kalith delegation laughed. It was a horrible sound, like insects clicking their jaws together. Velthox's giant body shook with amusement. He spoke again, his voice full of mockery. He had heard threats from 100 species. They all sounded brave until his fleets arrived. Humans were no different. They had primitive ships, weak weapons, and no understanding of real war. He declared that the Kalith Fifth Fleet would begin patrols of human space in 1 month. They would not invade. They would simply establish their presence. And if humans resisted, well, that would make things easier. The Kalith could take what they wanted instead of negotiating for it. Do-hyun leaned close to Minji and whispered so only she could hear. They don't believe we'll fight. They think we're bluffing. Minji's face remained calm, but her eyes were cold as winter. then they've already lost. They just don't know it yet. The assembly session ended. Minji and her team walked back to their shuttle through corridors filled with aliens who stared at them. Some looked at humans with pity, as if they were already dead. Others looked curious, wondering if Earth really had something hidden, some secret that made them so confident. On the shuttle ride back to their ship, Yuna reviewed the recordings of the session. She noticed something interesting. 7 smaller species had made subtle gestures when Minji spoke. Gestures of support, of respect, of understanding. These were species who had been conquered before, who had drawn their own lines that were crossed, who had given their own warnings that were ignored. They knew what was coming. They had seen this story before. Far across the galaxy, the Kalith Fifth Fleet began its journey toward human space. 200 massive warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest city. Their hulls were covered in energy shields that had never been broken. Their weapons could turn planets into dust. They had conquered 100 worlds and never lost a battle. Admiral Krathex stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at reports about human military strength. He laughed as he read. Humans had simple rockets for engines. Their weapons were just metal bullets fired by explosions. They had no shields, no energy weapons, nothing that could challenge Kalith technology. This would not be a battle. It would be a lesson. A demonstration to show all the younger species what happened when they forgot their place. But Krathex did not know about Project Prometheus. He did not know that humans had found something in the dark spaces beyond their solar system. He did not know that Earth had been preparing for this exact moment since the day they met their first alien species. He did not know that when humans are given a choice between surrender and extinction, they will find a third option. An option so terrible that even they were afraid of it. But fear had never stopped humanity before. The countdown had begun. In 27 days, the Kalith would cross the line. And then they would discover why you should never laugh at a human warning. Because humans only warn once. After that, they act. And when humanity acts, the galaxy trembles. 27 days passed like sand through an hourglass. On New Sol, the largest human colony, 47 million people watched the skies and waited. The city of Dijon stretched across the plateau, its buildings reaching toward the yellow sun. Machines still worked to make the air breathable, to turn this alien world into a home. Sergeant Hyunwoo Kang checked his rifle for the 20th time that morning. It was a simple weapon, firing metal bullets using chemical explosions. Ancient technology compared to what the Kalith had. But it was all he had, and he would use it until his last breath. Around him, his unit prepared defensive positions. They dug trenches, set up barriers, and tried not to think about how useless these preparations would be against plasma weapons that could melt through steel like butter. In space above the colony, Admiral Taehyung Nam stood on the bridge of his flagship. Through the windows he could see his fleet. 12 destroyers and 3 cruisers. They were the best ships humanity had built, with railguns that could punch, holes through asteroids and missiles that could track targets across millions of kilometers. Against the Kalith Fifth Fleet, they would last maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. But Taehyung was not worried. He knew something the Kalith did not. His hand moved to the communication panel, and he prepared to send the message that would change everything. Far beyond Earth's solar system, hidden in the frozen darkness of the Oort cloud, Dr. Ji Won-han worked in a research station that officially did not exist. Project Prometheus was humanity's greatest secret and greatest shame. The technology they had developed here violated every rule of ethical science, broke every treaty humanity had made with itself after the horrors of the old wars. But sometimes survival required terrible choices. Ji-won's hands shook as she entered the activation codes. She thought of all the scientists who had resigned in protest, who had called this project evil. Maybe they were right. But being right would not save humanity from extinction. The Kalith fleet arrived at the boundary humans called the Line. It was just empty space marked by small machines broadcasting warnings in 400 languages. Admiral Krathex listened to the automated message. It told him to turn back or face military action. He found it amusing. 200 warships moved forward in perfect formation. Their hulls shimmered with energy shields that could stop any weapon known to galactic science. Their plasma cannons charged with violet light. Each ship carried enough firepower to sterilize a continent. The Caliph crossed the line humanity had drawn. They did not hesitate, they did not slow down. They simply entered human space as if they owned it. Alarms screamed across New Seoul. Millions of people flooded into underground shelters, following drills they had practiced for months. Parents carried children. Old people helped each other down the stairs. Everyone moved with calm purpose, because panic would kill them as surely as plasma fire. On his flagship's bridge, Admiral Tae-hyung received confirmation. The Caliph had crossed. He opened a secure channel to Prometheus Station and spoke 3 words: "Begin Protocol Phoenix." The Caliph fleet moved toward New Seoul like a predator approaching prey. They were confident. They had done this 100 times before. Threaten the young species. Show them the power gap. Watch them surrender. Sometimes a species would fight, but that only meant the Caliph could take what they wanted by force instead of negotiation. Krathex ordered 1 ship to fire a warning shot. A single cruiser broke from the formation and fired its plasma cannon across New Seoul's path. The bolt of superheated energy passed close enough to the colony that its shields flared, lighting up the sky like a second sun. It was a message. Surrender now, or the next shot will not miss. Humanity's answer came not from their visible fleet, not from their simple weapons, but from the darkness itself. Space ripped open. Not a door or a portal, but a tear in reality itself. Light poured out, but it was light that hurt to look at. Light in colors that should not exist. Through these wounds in space, ships emerged. 500 vessels appeared. Throughout the Caliph formation, materializing in places where nothing had been seconds before. They were black as the void between stars, angular and sharp, covered in patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. They did not travel through space. They simply decided to be somewhere else, and reality bent to accommodate them. The Prometheus fleet had arrived. On Krathex's flagship, every sensor screamed warnings. The tactical computer tried to analyze the new ships and returned error messages. Power readings that violated the laws of thermodynamics. Position data that suggested the ships existed in multiple places at once. Weapon signatures that the system could not classify because they did not match any known physics. His science officer made frightened clicking sounds with her mandibles. "Admiral, these readings cannot be real. These ships should not be possible. They are breaking the fundamental laws of the universe." A transmission cut through all channels. It was audio only, but there was something wrong with it. The voice carried harmonics that bypassed language and spoke directly to the fear centers of the brain. Every Caliph on every ship felt their blood go cold. It was Admiral Tae-hyung, but his voice sounded like it came from somewhere beyond normal space. "We warned you. We told you not to cross that line. You laughed at us. You thought we were weak because we are young. You forgot something important about young species. We have nothing to lose. We did not evolve slowly into space over millions of years. We clawed our way up from a dying planet. We did not earn faster than light travel through careful science. We ripped it from the universe because we had no choice. Survival was not guaranteed, so we made it non-negotiable." The black ships began to move, flowing through space like oil on water. You wanted to see what humans are really capable of. Here it is. This is what happens when a species decides that extinction is not an option. This is what happens when we stop being afraid of what we might become and start being afraid of not becoming anything at all. You have one chance to leave. Take it. Because if we have to show you what these ships can do, there will not be enough pieces of your fleet left to carry the warning home. Silence filled the space between the two fleets. On New Seoul's surface, Sergeant Hyun-woo looked up at the sky where strange lights danced. He did not understand what he was seeing, but he knew one thing. Humanity had just revealed its true face to the galaxy, and that face was not human anymore. It was something new, something that had been born from desperation and fed on determination. It was beautiful and terrible, a testament to what a species could become when pushed to the edge of extinction. Admiral Krathex faced a decision that would define his legacy: retreat before a species he had mocked, admitting that the Caliph could be wrong, or advance and test whether humanity's threat was real. His pride made the choice for him. The Caliph had never retreated. They would not start now, not before primitives who had stumbled into advanced technology they did not understand. He gave the order to advance. It was the last command he would ever give as a free being, because some lines should not be crossed, some warnings should not be ignored, and some species, when pushed far enough, will show you exactly why they survived when so many others did not. The Caliph fleet moved forward. 200 warships accelerated toward the human defensive line. Admiral Krathex had made his choice, and now there was no turning back. His tactical officers reported that the human ships were not moving, not powering weapons, just floating in space like statues. Perhaps they were bluffing after all. Perhaps these strange black ships were just for show, designed to frighten but not to fight. Krathex ordered 3 cruisers to test the human defenses. They broke formation and raced toward the nearest Prometheus ships. The cruisers charged their plasma cannons. Violet light built up along their hulls. They fired. Bolts of superheated energy crossed the space between fleets at incredible speed. The shots were perfect, impossible to dodge, guaranteed hits. The plasma bolts struck empty space. The human ships were simply not there anymore. Not because they moved. The sensors showed they never moved. They had been in one location, then they were in another, with no time passing between. They had not dodged. They had simply chosen to exist somewhere else. On the bridge of the inevitable, Captain Yunji Bei received permission to return fire. Her thoughts connected directly to her ship through implants in her brain. She did not press buttons or give verbal commands. She simply thought about the Caliph cruisers ceasing to exist, and her ship made it happen. The Inevitable's weapon did not shoot beams or missiles. It reached backward in time just a fraction of a second and changed something small about the Caliph ships. A microscopic flaw appeared in their reactor containment fields, a flaw that had always been there, that would inevitably cause a catastrophic failure. The 3 Caliph cruisers exploded. They were advancing one moment, and the next they were expanding clouds of fire and metal. The cause came after the effect. The attack happened before the weapon fired. Time itself had been turned into a weapon. Krathex stared at his display in confusion. His analysts tried to explain what happened, but their reports made no sense. The cruisers had exploded in their own past. The destruction occurred before the human ship fired. It was impossible, but it had happened. Rage replaced confusion. Krathex had faced advanced technology before. He had fought species with surprising weapons. There was always a counter-strategy, always a way to win through superior numbers and experience. He ordered the full fleet to attack. 200 ships against 500. The Caliph had better shields, more experience, and the pride of 1,000 victories. It did not matter. None of it mattered. The Caliph fleet opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of plasma bolts lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked through space by the hundreds. Energy weapons created a web of destruction that should have vaporized anything in its path. Admiral Taehyung gave one command. Full demonstration. Show them everything. The Prometheus fleet responded. Reality screamed. Some Caliph ships suddenly existed in 2 places at once. Their hulls tried to occupy the same space as themselves from a different timeline. The ships tore themselves apart from the inside, metal screaming as it tried to reconcile impossible positions. Other ships aged billions of years in seconds. Entropy accelerated until the warships crumbled into frozen dust, their heat death arriving early by the lifetime of universes. One moment they were proud vessels of war. The next they were archaeological relics from a future that should not exist yet. Pairs of Caliph cruisers swapped positions instantly, materializing inside each other in violations of every law of physics. The collisions were not explosions. They were events that reality itself rejected, spaces where the universe could not decide what was real. The worst weapons were the simplest. Human ships transmitted mathematical proofs, equations so paradoxical that any computer trying to process them would crash. The Caliph relied heavily on automated systems. Their tactical computers received the transmissions and tried to calculate the answers. The computers concluded that the ships had both won and lost every battle simultaneously, that they were moving and still at the same time, that the crews both needed and did not need oxygen. The contradictions cascaded through every system. Life support failed. Navigation locked up. Weapons refused to fire or fired at their own ships. In 12 minutes, the Calith Fifth Fleet ceased to exist as a fighting force. Nearly 200 warships became debris, their crews dead or insane from exposure to impossible realities. The few survivors huddled in damaged ships, their minds broken by seeing things that should not be possible. Not a single Prometheus ship was damaged. They phased out of reality when attacked. They retroactively ensured shots missed. They simply decided that surviving was mandatory and bent probability to make it true. Admiral Krathex found himself alone on his bridge. His crew had fled when the paradoxes hit their ship. The life support had told them they were suffocating and breathing normally at the same time. The stress had broken their minds. His ship was crippled, floating in a graveyard of his own making. Then a Prometheus ship appeared beside him. Not approaching, not moving. Just suddenly there, as if it had always been there and he had only just noticed. A communication channel opened. Admiral Taehyung's voice came through, but it sounded tired now, almost sad. "We're going to let you live, Admiral. We're repairing your ship right now. Your engines will restart in a few minutes. You're going to go home and tell your people exactly what happened here. Tell them what Earth is capable of. Tell them that we gave a warning and they laughed and now they're gone. Tell them that humanity does not bluff. When we draw a line, we mean it. When we make a threat, we follow through." Krathex watched as human technology fixed his ship through means he could not comprehend. Systems that had been destroyed were suddenly working again, not repaired, but retroactively prevented from breaking in the first place. His navigation computer came online with a course already programmed. "A direct line back to Calith space," Taehyung spoke again. "We didn't want this war. We hoped you would listen to reason. But young species survive by doing what old species have forgotten. We adapt, we change, we become whatever we need to be to survive. You thought evolution stopped once you reached the stars. You were wrong. Evolution never stops. It just gets more intentional." The channel closed. Krathex's ship began moving, carrying him away from the debris field that had once been his fleet. He was alive. He would deliver the message. But he was no longer the proud admiral who had dismissed human threats as primitive posturing. He was a warning. A living testament to what happened when you crossed humanity's line. On New Sol, Sergeant Hyenwoo emerged from his bunker. The sky was filled with strange lights, aurora-like displays in colors that did not exist in nature. The children pointed at them in wonder, not understanding they were watching the residual radiation from weapons that had bent reality itself. On the Indomitable, Admiral Taehyung looked at the debris field on his displays. Each piece of wreckage had been a living being. Each ship had contained people with families, dreams, futures. All gone now, erased because they chose not to believe a warning. Dr. G1's voice came through on a private channel from Prometheus Station. "We've become monsters, Taehyung. We've turned into exactly what we fought to prevent. We bend reality to kill our enemies. Are we still human?" Taehyung closed his eyes. "We're alive, G1. We gave them every chance to walk away. The moral weight of survival is something only the living can bear. The dead have no such burden." Across the galaxy in the assembly station, emergency sessions continued. Every species was asking the same question. If humanity could do this to the mighty Calith, what else were they hiding? What other warnings had they prepared that nobody should test? The answer would come soon. Because this was not the end of humanity's transformation. It was only the beginning. 3 weeks after the battle, the galaxy was in chaos. The Galactic Assembly could not stop arguing. Some species wanted to make Earth an enemy. Others wanted to become allies before humanity decided to expand. Everyone was afraid, and fear made them angry. Ambassador Minji stood in the center of the Great Hall once again. But everything had changed. Before, aliens had looked at her with pity or contempt. Now they looked at her with fear, some with respect, some with hatred. But nobody laughed anymore. The accusations came like waves. Earth had lied about its capabilities. Earth had hidden weapons while pretending to seek peace. Earth had violated the transparency rules that all assembly members must follow. Some species demanded that humanity give up the Prometheus technology. Others wanted economic sanctions. A few militant species whispered about attacking Earth before humans became even more dangerous. Minji listened to it all. Her face showed no emotion, though inside she felt the weight of every word. When silence finally came, she spoke. "You ask why we hid our strength. Let me answer with a question. If we had told you the truth from the beginning, would you have welcomed us? Would the Caliph have offered fair negotiations instead of demands? Would any of you have seen us as partners instead of threats? We hid because honesty meant extinction. We developed Prometheus because we saw what happens to young species who show weakness in a galaxy where might makes right. You created us. Your contempt forced us to become this. We wanted to build colonies and trade routes. You wanted us to stay small and controlled, so we chose survival over your approval. The hall erupted. Some species cheered. These were the ones who remembered being crushed by stronger neighbors, who saw humanity as proof that the old order could be challenged. Others shouted in anger, seeing Earth as a threat to stability. The assembly split along ancient fault lines between those who believed power should rest with the old and strong, and those who remembered fighting against such tyranny. On the Caliph homeworld, a very different debate was happening. Supreme Hierarchess Velkana presided over her war council in a chamber built from the remains of conquered worlds. Her advisors argued about how to respond to the humiliation. Some wanted immediate revenge, send the second and third fleets together, overwhelm humanity through sheer numbers before they could deploy more Prometheus ships. Others urged caution. They should study the debris from the Fifth Fleet, understand human technology, find its weaknesses before attacking again. A third group suggested something that shocked everyone. Perhaps it was time to negotiate as equals. Humanity had earned respect through force. Accept it, adapt to it, and move forward. Velkana listened to all arguments. Then she made a decision that would define her reign. She sent a message to Earth's government requesting a direct meeting. Not as superior to inferior, but as one sovereign power to another. The request included a phrase that had never appeared in Caliph diplomatic communications before. Please. On Earth, President Seok Jin received the message in the underground command center beneath Geneva. He was a former colonial administrator who had never wanted this responsibility. Now he had to decide whether to meet with the species that had just tried to steal Earth's colonies. His advisors were split. Some said meeting showed weakness. Others argued that refusing guaranteed future conflict. Seokjin made his choice. Accept the meeting. Show that humanity could be reasonable victors, not just capable warriors. While governments negotiated, a different crisis was growing on Earth itself. A movement had formed, calling themselves the Conscience Coalition. They were humans who opposed Project Prometheus, who believed humanity had sold its soul for survival. Their leader was Dr. Sora Jung, a quantum physicist who had resigned from early Prometheus research. She stood before crowds in cities around Earth, her voice passionate and angry. We have become monsters. We kill using weapons that break the laws of physics. We justify any atrocity by calling it survival. But what have we survived as? Are we still human if we're willing to tear reality apart to win? I say we've lost something more important than any war. We've lost our humanity. The coalition began leaking classified information to the assembly, details about how Prometheus weapons were developed, casualty calculations, reports of ethical review boards that were overruled. They believed transparency would force Earth to disarm, that the galaxy would intervene before humanity became an unstoppable threat. Commander Do-hyun was assigned to investigate the leaks. It was painful work. These were his own people acting from genuine moral belief. They truly thought they were saving humanity from itself, but their revelations endangered Earth's security while the Caliph might still attack. He found himself questioning his own role. Was he protecting Earth or protecting the government's secrets? Was the coalition right that humanity had gone too far? On the assembly station, preparations began for the Earth Caliph Summit. Security forces from dozens of species patrolled the corridors. Everyone expected violence. Everyone prepared for the worst. Counselor Yuna, working her usual duty of monitoring communications, detected something that made her blood run cold. Encrypted Caliph military transmissions suggested that Velkana's peace offer might be a trick. The second and third fleets were moving into position. The summit might be cover for a massive attack. She reported this to Ambassador Minji, who faced a terrible choice. Go to the summit and risk walking into a trap, or refuse and confirm that trust between species was impossible. But then something happened that changed everything. Admiral Tae-hyung, commanding the Prometheus fleet near New Seoul, detected strange signals from deep space, quantum signatures that matched Prometheus drives. But humanity had only built 500 such ships and all were accounted for. Someone else had the technology. Or something else was out there, using the same physics humanity thought they had discovered. Dr. G1 at Prometheus Station analyzed the signals. She ran the calculations 3 times, refusing to believe the results. Then she sent an emergency message to Taehyung. The message contained only 1 sentence, but that sentence rewrote everything humanity thought they knew. We didn't invent Prometheus. We discovered it. And now its true owners know we're here. Taehyung stared at the message. Humanity's greatest weapon, their guarantee of survival, had never been theirs at all. They had found ancient technology and thought themselves clever for using it. But every use had been a signal, a beacon calling out across the void. And now something was answering. The quantum signatures were growing stronger, closer. Whatever was coming had technology that made Prometheus ships look primitive. And it was heading straight for human space. On the assembly station, Minji prepared to meet with Velkhana, unaware that their species' conflict had just become irrelevant. A greater threat was approaching, one that would force humans and Kalith to answer a simple question. Could ancient enemies become allies when faced with something neither could survive alone? The galaxy was about to find out. Dr. G1 worked through the night, her fingers flying across holographic displays at Prometheus Station. The more she studied the incoming signals, the more terrified she became. The quantum signatures were not just similar to human technology. They were identical, but they predated human civilization by millions of years. She pulled up the original research files from when humanity first developed Prometheus. Scientists had found strange objects in Earth's Oort cloud, buried in ice and rock. They thought the objects were natural phenomena, unusual quantum formations, but when they studied them, they discovered technology, ancient technology that showed them how to bend reality. Humanity had not invented anything. They had reverse-engineered artifacts from a dead civilization, or what they thought was a dead civilization. G1 decoded more of the signals. What she found made her hands shake. The beings who created this technology called themselves the architects. They had been the galaxy's first spacefaring species, rising to power when the universe was young. They had mastered physics in ways no current species could imagine, and then they had transcended, leaving physical form behind to exist as patterns of information in quantum foam. But before leaving, they had seeded the galaxy with their technology. Tests waiting for younger species to find them. When a species proved capable of using architect tools, the architects would return, to judge, to evaluate, to decide if the new species was worthy. Humanity had triggered the test by building the Prometheus fleet. And now the architects were coming home. On the assembly station, Ambassador Minji entered the private meeting chamber, where Supreme Hierarchess Velkhana waited. The Kalith leader looked different somehow. Less arrogant, more thoughtful. 2 beings who had been enemies days ago now sat across from each other, searching for common ground. Velkhana spoke first. Her translation came through clear and direct. She admitted the Kalith had underestimated humanity. Their contempt had blinded them to Earth's potential. She proposed a treaty, recognition of sovereignty, buffer zones between their territories, technology exchange, not Prometheus secrets, but enough to build real cooperation. Minji listened carefully. Was this genuine peace or a delay tactic while Kalith fleets positioned for another attack? She was about to respond when Commander Dohyun burst through the door, forgetting all protocol. Ambassador, we need to evacuate now. Before anyone could move, alarms screamed through the station. On every view screen, the impossible appeared. Ships emerging from nowhere. Not human ships, not Kalith. Something else entirely. The architect vessels were geometry made real. Structures that hurt to look at because they existed in more dimensions than the eye could process. They were beautiful and terrible, bleeding light in colors that had no names. Where Prometheus ships bent reality, these ships were reality, choosing their own rules moment by moment. The architects did not communicate. They did not threaten. They simply acted. Their first target was Prometheus Station. They appeared beside Dr. G1's research facility and reached out with weapons that operated on principles beyond comprehension. The station did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to exist, erased from causality as if it had never been built. G1 survived only because she wore a quantum suit that anchored her existence to multiple timelines. She found herself floating in space where her station should be, protected by technology that suddenly seemed like a child's toy. She transmitted one final message before her suit's power failed. "They're not invading. They're reclaiming property. We're thieves." Admiral Taehyung tried to respond with the Prometheus fleet, but the ships would not fire. Their weapons recognized architects' signatures and refused to attack their creators. Humanity's ultimate weapon had always been compromised, designed to ensure the architects could take them back whenever they chose. The architects systematically took control of every Prometheus vessel, not destroying them but assimilating them, adding 500 reality-bending warships to their fleet. In minutes, humanity's advantage was gone. Worse than gone, it had become an enemy asset. On the assembly station, Minji and Velkana watched the disaster unfold. The hierarchess's mandibles clicked, and what Minji had learned was Kalith calculation. They will come for conventional forces next. Our ships are primitive compared to theirs, but numbers help in any war. How many vessels can our species gather in 3 hours? Minji met the alien's compound eyes. Together? Maybe 1,500 ships. Against an enemy that exists outside normal physics and just stole our best weapons. We'll last minutes if we're lucky. Minutes, Velkana agreed. But perhaps minutes matter. Perhaps survival requires stubborn refusal to accept extinction. You proved that against us. Time to see if old species remember how. The impossible happened. Earth and the Kalith Dominion issued joint military commands. Human and Kalith fleets converged on New Sol, preparing to defend the colony together. Admiral Taehyung found himself coordinating with Kalith tactical networks, planning strategy with the same species he had defeated weeks ago. It was desperate. Probably futile, but it was also the first time in galactic history that these two powers fought on the same side. 1,500 ships formed a defensive sphere around New Sol. Humans and Kalith, side by side facing an enemy neither could defeat alone. They powered weapons. They charged shields. They prepared to buy civilians time to evacuate, even if that time was measured in seconds. The architect fleet approached. Then, impossibly, they stopped. Their ships held position just beyond weapons range, powered but not firing, waiting for something. A transmission arrived. Not through radio or quantum channels, but directly into every mind that could receive it. Humans with implants heard it. Kalith felt it through their sensory organs. Every being in the combined fleet received the same message. You defended each other. You set aside hatred for survival. You demonstrated cooperation. This was the test. You passed. On the Indomitable's bridge, Taehyung stared at his tactical display in confusion. Dohyun voiced what everyone was thinking. This was a test? They erased Prometheus Station. They killed thousands. As a test? The architects responded. Not killed. Suspended. Dr. Ji-won Han and all others exist in probabilistic state. If you prove worthy, they return. If not, they never were. You found our technology and used it for war. Expected. But when faced with superior force, you chose alliance over futile resistance. This marks species capable of growth. You may yet become what we once were. On the assembly station, Minji and Velkana looked at each other with the same realization. The architects were not conquerors. They were judges, testing whether younger species deserved their technology or if it should be reclaimed before it destroyed them. One final message came. You have 1 day to decide. Embrace cooperation and receive full access to architect knowledge, or return to your conflicts and lose the technology forever. Choose wisely. The universe watches. The architect fleet vanished, leaving behind the captured Prometheus ships, now inert and waiting. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had warned the Kalith once. The Kalith had laughed. Now they were allies, and together, they faced a choice that would define not just their species, but perhaps the entire future of galactic civilization. Accept the architect's offer and gain power beyond imagination, or refuse and keep their independence even if it meant giving up the technology that made them strong. It was the ultimate test. And the clock was ticking.